Next, I will demonstrate some examples on the required textbook by Chen and Salaba using Dewey. The first example is on page 610, showing how to add an entire number from the schedules to a base number. This book is a general periodical written in the Russian language, just like the New York Times, but it's written in Russian. And the logics of building this DDC number is that we should first identify the class number for a general periodical and then subdivide it by different language. Let's go to Dewey. After entering the username and password provided on slide 10, you should be able to log in and see this main interface. And did you remember that the first three digits of any DDC numbers are the main class number, division number, and section number? So we should first identify these three numbers using Dewey. And you can click on main classes under DDC 23. Since we are using the full version, we should use the links on this left-hand side. So click on main classes. Among these 10 main classes, which one should we select to represent a general periodical written in Russian? And compared to the Library of Congress classification, which has 21 main classes, DDC only has 10 main classes. So it is relatively easy to get started. You only have 10 options to choose. And did you remember that the main class 000 is used to represent the most general class not limited to any specific disciplines, such as encyclopedias and newspapers? So among these 10 main class numbers, we should select 000, which represents computer science, knowledge, and general works. And among these 10 division numbers, which one should we select to represent a general periodical written in Russian? It seems that the most appropriate division number is 050, which represents magazines, journals, and serials. So click on 050. In this case, there were only two options. Obviously, we should click on the second link, which will direct us to the journal serial publications in specific languages and language families, as our book is a general periodical written in Russian. Then you see the journal serial publications in different languages or language families. And next, we need to determine which section number to choose. Since Russian is a type of Slavic languages, we should select 057. So click on 057. And there are no more further subdivisions. But the notes here tell us to add to the base number 057 the numbers following 037 in 037.1 to 037.9 for language only. Just like how you construct the just like how you construct the LC classification numbers. We should first write down this base number 057. This is very important. So let's write down the base number 057 first. And then next, based on this notes, we should go to 037 to identify the language for Russian. And you can click on this search button to go back to the main interface and then click on main classes under DDC 23. And then we should click on 000 again. And then click on 030 this time, which represents encyclopedia and books of facts. Similar to magazines, journals, and serials, there were only two options here. We should click on the second link as 037 is located within this range. And then we find that 037 represents general encyclopedia works in Slavic languages. So click on it. And we find that 037.1 represents general encyclopedia works in Russian. Remember, as I mentioned before, this slash is the segmentation mark but not part of the DDC number. We should just ignore it, pretending it does not exist. And if you go back to the notes under 057, it tells us to add to the base number 057 the numbers following 037 within a range of 037.1 to 037.9 for language only. And now we have identified the DDC number for the general encyclopedia works for in the Russian language is 037.1, and based on the notes under based on the notes under 057, we should only add the number following 037. In this case, it's just 1. We should only add this 1 to the base number 057. So next, we should add 1 to 057, and don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit, as it contains more than 3 digits. So 057.1 is the DDC number we developed to represent the general Russian periodical. And if this is the first time you using Web Dewey, you may find the notes a bit difficult to understand or follow. But the good thing about Web Dewey is that it provides you with examples. If you are unsure whether you understand these notes correctly, you can work on the examples here. And there is an example here, which is the Journal Zero publications written in the Polish language. Let's see if we can develop the same DDC number as provided here. And the first few steps should be the same, so we should first write down the base number 057. And then next, we should go back to 037 to identify the notation for the Polish language. And among these 3 links, this time we should select the second link as it represents general encyclopedia works in other Slavic languages, because the Polish language in this case should be the other Slavic languages. So click on 037.8. And then we find that 037.85 represents general encyclopedia works in Polish. And again, if you take a look at the notes under 057, we should only add to the base number 057 the numbers following 037. And we have identified the DDC number for the general encyclopedia works in Polish is 037.85. So in this case, we should only add the numbers following 037, which are 85. So again, we should only add 85 to the base number 057. Adding 85 to the base number 057 ends up with 05785, and don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit. So the DDC number we constructed representing the general serial publications in the Polish language is 057.85, and it's exactly the same as the DDC number showing here on the example under the notes of 057. So that means we are on the right track and understand these notes correctly. Let's see the second example, which is a bibliography of physics. And the logics of building this DDC number is that we should first find the appropriate class number for physics, and then add the standard subdivision representing bibliographic to the base number representing physics. If you are familiar with Table 1 standard subdivision, you should know that T1-016 represents bibliographics, catalogs, and indexes. So again, we should first find the base number representing physics and then add the standard subdivision to the base number representing physics. So let's go back to the main interface of Web Dewey and then click on Main Classes under DDC 23 to identify the notation for physics. And among these 10 main classes, which one should we select for physics? And obviously, we should select 500 representing science, right? So click on it. And next, among these different division numbers, which one should we select for physics? And obviously, we should select 530 representing physics, right? So click on 530, and next, we should probably select the first link, as the others are specific branches of physics. And the book we are classifying is a bibliography of physics in the general sense. So click on 530 again. And next, we found the standard subdivisions of physics within the range of 530.03 to 530.09. So click on it. And there are no more further subdivisions. As I mentioned before, you can feel free to use the standard subdivisions from Table 1 if it is appropriate, unless there are notes on Web Dewey telling us not to do so. In this case, there are no notes under 530 telling us not to use Table 1. So next, we can go ahead to use Table 1. And we have found that T1-016 represents bibliographies, catalogs, and indexes, so click on it. And there are no more further subdivisions. However, the notes here indicate optional number, prefer 016. So based on this notes, we should click on this link, which will direct us to 016. And we find that 016 represents bibliographies and catalogs of works on specific subjects. And also we found a lot of DDC numbers here under 016, and all come with the puzzle size. And the DDC numbers with the puzzle size were contributed by the catalogers using Web Dewey, and technically they are not part of the DDC schedules. You may use them as references. And the notes under 016 tell us to add to the base number 016 a notation within the range of 001 to 999, and there are also some examples here. And the first thing we should do is to write down the base number 016. So write down the base number 016 first, and then next we should go back to the main interface to identify the class number for physics, right? And actually we have already identified the notation representing physics within the range of 001 to 999. That is 530, right, representing physics. And then next, we can add this 530 representing physics to the base number 016, right? So adding 530 to the base number 016 ends up with 016 530, and don't forget to add place a decimal point after the third digit, as it contains more than 3 digits. And also we should remove this terminal 0. As I mentioned before, no DDC numbers can end with a 0 after the decimal point. So we should also remove this terminal 0. In this case, 016.53 is the DDC number representing a bibliography of physics. And next, we can work on the examples provided by the notes under 016. Let's try the bibliographies of philosophy to see whether we can develop the same DDC number as shown here. So again, we should first write down the base number 016. And then next, we should go back to the main interface to identify the DDC number for philosophy. So click on the search button to go back to the main interfaces, and then click on main classes under DDC 23. And among these 10 main classes, obviously we should select 100, which represents philosophy and psychology. So click on it, and next, among these different options, we should probably select 100 again for philosophy in the general sense, as the other options are different branches of philosophy all about psychology. So click on 100. And among these different options, again, we should select 100 for philosophy in the general sense. So click on 100 again. And next, even though 100 here represents philosophy, parapsychology, etc., the notes here tell us that we can class the discipline of philosophy itself and also comprehensive works on philosophy brought in love to include blah blah blah. So the notes here tell us that we can use this 100 to class works that discuss the discipline of philosophy in the general sense. And then next, we should add this 100 to the base number 016, right? So it ends up with 016 100. And don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit as it contains more than 3 digits. And also don't forget to remove these terminal zeros. So 016.1 is the DDC number we developed for a bibliography of philosophy. And it's exactly the same as the DDC number showing on the example here. So that means we are on the right track, understand this notes correctly. And you may try to work on the other examples here under the notes of 016 to see whether you can develop the same DDC numbers as showing here. Let's see the third example, which is a journal of library science. And this example demonstrates how to add a notation from Table 1 standard subdivisions. And the logics of building this DDC number is that we should first find the appropriate class number for library science, and then add the standard subdivision from Table 1 to the base number representing library science. And again, if you are very familiar with Table 1, you should know that T1-05 represents serials, which also is journals, right? So let's click on the search button to go back to the main interface and then click on the main classes under DDC 23 to identify the notation for library science. And among these 10 main classes, which one should we select for library science? And as I mentioned before, our discipline library science should be located under 000, so click on it. And then next, among these 10 division numbers, which one should we select to represent library information science? And obviously, we should click on 020, which represents library information science, right? And then next, among these different section numbers, we should select 020 again as it represents library and information science. And the notes under 020 tell us that standard subdivisions are added for either or both topics in their heading. So that means the standard subdivisions can be added for library science, information science, or library information science respectively. So based on these notes, we can add a standard subdivision to 020 to represent a journal of library science. So let's go back to Table 1, and again, T1-05 represents serial publications, that is journals, right? So click on it, and there are no more further subdivisions. And next, we can go ahead to add this 05 from Table 1 to the base number 020, which represents library science. But there is a rule in DDC saying that before adding a standard subdivision to a base number, we should first remove all the terminal zeros that are used as fillers in the base number. In this case, the base number representing library science has a terminal 0, so we should first remove it and then add the standard subdivision 05 to it. So again, we should first remove the terminal 0 in the base number 020 and then add the standard subdivision 05 to 02 it ends up with 0205. And don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit. So 020.5 is the DDC number representing a journal of library science. And this slide summarizes some of the rules of using the standard subdivisions from Table 1. I just demonstrated the first rule on this slide. That is, before adding a standard subdivision to a base number, if the base number has terminal zeros, you should first remove those terminal zeros of the base number before adding the standard subdivision. And later I will show you one more example of how to apply this rule. And the second rule is that one standard subdivision cannot be added to another standard subdivision unless there are specific instructions telling you to do so on Dewey. That means usually you cannot add more than one standard subdivision to a base number, but there are 3 exceptions when you can do so. The first one is when the standard subdivision T1-04 representing special topics is used. The second exception is when a standard subdivision has extended meaning. I will show you an example demonstrating this exception later. And the third exception is when the standard subdivision concepts have been displaced to non-zero numbers. Did you remember that the standard subdivisions all start with a 0? So if the standard subdivisions have been displaced to become non-zero numbers, then you can add another standard subdivision to the base number. So these are the 3 exceptions when you can add more than one standard subdivision to a base number. But usually, you can only add one standard subdivision from Table 1 to a base number. If there are more than 2 standard subdivisions that can be added to a base number, which one to choose is based on the table of preference. And later I will show you an example demonstrating how to use this table of preference. But this table of preference used to the rule of application and the rule of 0. This is something you should keep in mind. Let's take a look at an example showing how to use the table of preference. This is a journal of education for librarianship. And the logics of building this DDC number is that we should first find the appropriate class number for librarianship and then add the standard subdivision from Table 1 to the base number representing librarianship. And actually, we just identify the notation representing library science for the example on slide 24, which is 020, right? So the class number for librarianship is 020. And if you are familiar with the standard subdivision, you should know that T1-05 represents serial publications, that is journal, and and T1-07 represents education, research, and related topics. So in this case, 2 standard subdivisions from Table 1 are applicable to this book. According to the rules on using Table 1, when 2 standard subdivisions are applicable to a work, we should choose one based on the table of preference under Table 1. And if you go to Table 1 and scroll down to the notes, you will find this table of preference. And the standard subdivisions on the top of this table of preference have higher priority than those on the bottom. And you find the standard subdivision T1-07 is on the top of this table of preference, while T1-05 is at the bottom of this table of preference. So that means between these 2 standard subdivisions, we should choose education or serial publication if both of them are applicable to a work. So we should add the standard subdivision 07 from Table 1 to the base number 020. And since the base number 020 has the terminal 0. Before adding a standard subdivision to it, we should first remove this terminal 0, ending up with 02, and then next we can add the standard subdivision 07 that we identified from table 1 to the base number 02, ending up with 0207. And don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit, as it contains more than 3 digits. So 020.7 is the DDC number representing a journal of education for librarianship. Let's see one more example of how to use the standard subdivisions from table 1. This is a journal of nursing, and the logics of filling this DDC number is that we should first find the appropriate class number for nursing, and then we can add the standard subdivision to the base number representing nursing. So let's click on the search button to go back to the main interface and then click on main classes under DDC 23. Something interesting is that nursing is located under 600 technology, I think at that time when Dewey developed this bibliographic classification system. Nursing and medicine were considered technology. And then among these 10 division numbers under 600, it seems the most appropriate one is 610, which represents medicine and health. So click on 610. And you find that the most appropriate one is still 610, which represents medicine and health. So click on it. And next, you find that 610.7 represents education, research, nursing, services of allied health personnel. So this is the most appropriate subdivision. So we should click on it. And then next, you find 610.73 represents nursing and services of allied health personnel. And again, this is the most appropriate one, and it's also the only option. So let's click on it. And then next, we find the further subdivisions of 610.73 are specific topics of nursing. So we should probably stop here. The notation representing nursing should be 610.73. And the notes under 610.73 tell us standard subdivisions are added for nursing and services of allied health personnel together and for nursing alone. So based on this notes, we can tell that we can add the standard subdivision to 610.73 to represent a journal of nursing. So if you go back to table 1, you find that T1-05 represents serial publications, right? So click on it, and there are no more further subdivisions. So in this case, we found that 05 from table 1 represents serial publications or journal, right? So next, we can add this standard subdivision 05 from table 1 to the base number we just identified, which is 610.73. So let's write down the base number 610.73, and then next, we add the standard subdivision 05 to it. It ends up with 610.7305, and don't forget to place a decimal point after the third digit. So 610.7305 is the DDC number representing a journal of nursing.